Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. But we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Open borders, shameful abandonment, disregard for human life, the prospect of more mandates and lockdowns, and the list goes on. Now more than ever, we need to stick together. Voting alone is not enough. We must use our dollars to support like-minded companies that fight for our rights and beliefs. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider who shares your values. Last year, we gave more than $500,000 to conservative causes. With your support, we'll give more than $1.5 million this year. It's time to band together and support companies that truly love America and fight for our freedoms. Will you join us?
Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. But we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Open borders, shameful abandonment, disregard for human life, the prospect of more mandates and lockdowns, and the list goes on. Now more than ever, we need to stick together. Voting alone is not enough. We must use our dollars to support like-minded companies that fight for our rights and beliefs. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider who shares your values. Last year, we gave more than $500,000 to conservative causes. With your support, we'll give more than $1.5 million this year. It's time to band together and support companies that truly love America and fight for our freedoms. Will you join us?
This is Kentucky's Voice Radio, covering the latest state and local issues with Tom Fallbush, Bob Scott, and Jim Waters.
All right, welcome to Kentucky's Voice. I'm your host today, Tom Fallbush, and I have my co-host with me, Bob Scott, and we're going to talk about a couple interesting issues today. One is just the Turning Point USA organization and just the impact it's having here in the state of Kentucky. And we have a special guest we're going to interview here in the next segment. And there's, of course, there's several chapters of Turning Point USA, campus chapters throughout the state. You got one at U of L, University of Louisville, and there's one at UK. And so we have a member of that group, of that chapter, that's going to be on with us today. They're going to just talk about just life and culture on campus right now for a conservative. You know, what's the campus atmosphere, the environment? What's it like to be a young person today on campus that wants to hold traditional conservative values? And so it's not an easy thing. It's not an easy place to operate. But we have organizations like TPUSA, Bob, that can come along and give students courage to stand up for what they believe in. I think that's first of all, everybody knows what TPUSA is if you're listening to this. If you're listening to Conservative Talk Radio, you understand who Charlie Kirk is, and you understand what Turning Point USA is. It's a organization that is focused primarily on empowering college students to stand up for their conservative, traditional American values on the college campus and on high school campuses. And so important because that's where the battle is in our culture is these campuses, and so that's what Turning Point USA is, and it's making huge inroads into the culture and the life of young people in this country, and it's just a wonderful thing to see. And so Bob and I were at an event Monday night for Turning Point Faith, which is their church focused outreach, and so churches can have their own Turning Point chapter called Turning Point Faith. And we were at that event at Evangel World Pro Center on Monday night. Just a great turnout. We met, of course, our guest Haley Miller here. We're going to interview in a minute. We met her there. Also, the U of L and Bellarmine chapter presidents. So, Bob, what are your thoughts about Monday night's event?
I tell you what, I was pleasantly surprised. It was a packed house. As far as the room we were in, I know there was well over 100 people there that turned up and showed out, with regard to supporting, the work of Turning Point, continuing the legacy of Charlie Kirk. I think most of us are still grieving, what happened to him. But since his death, I still have a hard time saying that. I'll be honest with you.
Right.
Since his death, the growth has been explosive.
Yeah.
It's like 100-fold growth.
That's right.
And they're exploding not only in this country but really all over the world. And a big part of that is obviously what's going on at the campuses. That was the heart of Charlie's ministry. He would go into the lion's den and not ever being afraid to speak truth, and he did it in love.
Yeah.
To these young people, and again, that's the reason he was taken out was if they couldn't beat him from the standpoint of a fair
rhetoric,
debate, they killed him.
Yeah.
And that's something I know we'll be talking more about this later, but we as Americans need to be waking up to this.
Right, exactly right. And that's what I love about Turning Point and just Charlie's work and the mission of the. They understood we're in a battle. They understood that the battle is a cultural battle. It's a battle of ideas. And the way to win that battle is to communicate, is to get out there and communicate and test those ideas and try to do outreach to your opponents, to your ideological adversaries, and try to win them over, not to beat them over the head. He was great about not being abusive to the opponents. He actually very whimsical. He would bring, not whimsical. What's the word? Winsome. He'd basically allow people to come to his side and video after video of him winning over somebody that had a left-wing view. It was just a wonderful approach. So his legacy is wonderful. It's going to continue. We'll be right back. We have a member of a Turning Point USA chapter here at UK. We'll be right back with that interview.
Back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
All right, welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. We have a special guest today, a member of Gen Z, someone who is on the front lines at a university here in this state, at the University of Kentucky, a conservative young woman who is a member of Turning Point USA. And her name is Haley Miller. We want to bring her on. And we met Haley at the Turning Point USA Faith event on Monday night, and she spoke a few words and somewhat representing the UK chapter, though she's not officially representing the UK chapter today because they have to go through a series of protocols to kind of do that. So she's just representing herself, but also someone who's working with TPUSA as a member. And so Haley, thanks for coming on today. And so first of all, let's just get right into just the way the world is right now. So what is it like as a young person on campus that is a conservative? I believe you're probably a believer, a Christian as well. And so what is life like? What are some of the pressures that you feel, and just what's the culture there on campus? And is it tough? Is it easy? Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. And yes, I'm now a senior at the University of Kentucky, but walking on 3 years ago as a freshman at 18 years old, somewhere around there, you realize very quickly, me coming from a very conservative Christian background and getting to experience God's love from a very young age, you get on there and you see this epidemic of people with depression that are 18, so young. You see a lot of lost eyes. And at 18, I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't know. I wanted to help. I wanted to have a voice, but I am agreeable to a fault naturally. So I stayed quiet for about a year. And I would get in my car from campus and I would just be overwhelmed and feelings of sadness for people who were looking for truth. I think everybody at 18, because they're so impressionable, myself impressionable as well, but I had my rock, which was God, and my family. You see people looking for truth, I feel, all the time and everywhere they're looking for truth. And the first thing they come to that sounds great and makes them feel warm and fuzzy inside, that's what they choose. And I'd be in group projects and people would kind of mock God, and I stayed quiet, and they would share their more liberalistic views, and I prayed about it and I thought about it, like, what do I do? And then I started seeing Charlie Kirk pop up on my page, on my social media. He, around, I guess, is 22, I started to see it everywhere in 2022. Mm-hmm. And the way he there's many wonderful things, obviously, about Charlie Kirk, his supernatural ability to just be a historian, just everything about him and his intelligence. But what captivated me and encouraged me truly um, was his ability to speak the truth, but not shove it down people's throats. He would
Right.
just share the truth, and he would share God's love. And people in the Bible, it talks about not even your enemies can hate you when you look at them.
Yeah.
And you saw from his videos from every day, most everybody who came to attack him left with some sort of respect for him and thought, wow, the fruits of his labor, what he's doing, what he believes in, who he is, it's working.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that gave me so much confidence. That's what I carried with me. So I started to speak up in classes, and I would just say, what do you think? Just like what he would do. And we need more conversations on campus. That's at the end of the day, these people who are lost, who are 18 and young and impressionable, we need to speak up, and in a loving way, and in the way I do it, which is just, hey, come to this with me, come to Turning Point, come, just what do you think? Just have conversations. I
That's
think that
right.
at the end of the day,
Yeah.
that's what we lack so much. Nobody talks on campus, and everybody stays in their bubble, and then when they do, it's negative. And so that's been my experience, and I've Charlie really encouraged me to speak up in the way that he did. So that was very encouraging for me.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I totally echo what you're saying there, because Charlie really lived an approach to this that was based in a heart of faith and of love for the opponent, or for somebody that has a different worldview. And at the end of the day, there's two things. There's ideas that we're trying to battle out and trying to weigh out what's true, what's not. But then there's also that person you're dealing with. They're a real human being who have hurts and loves and ambitions and goals, and it's very in the world of politics and ideas. Very often that can be ignored, and actually that's actually, like I tell you, the left, they could care less. They want to just beat you up and make you a bad person and make you feel bad about yourself, because and so the right can fall into that trap if they're not careful, because it's very easy to say, oh, look at those evil people, they're just terrible, they're just let's just go crush them. But you don't win them, and you don't first of all, people don't really want to hear what you say until they know that you care about them.
Yeah. They don't
Right?
care how
Yeah.
much you know until they know how much you care.
That's it. Yeah,
That is
that's
the
it.
truth. And that it really, at the end of the day, again, my favorite thing about what impacted me the most about Charlie and his legacy and everything that he has touched and is continued his legacy, um, is how he went about sharing the truth. And that's exactly what you're saying. And it's a very calm. It's the opposite of what they attack the opposing side, the left, what they say about us
Yeah, what
as
they label
Republicans,
us with.
conservatives.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
the labels that they put on us. That is just the way Charlie spoke, and the way was so calm and so respectful. And I think if we can just bring back respectful conversations, just like what Charlie said to campus, I've had just a couple in the last 2 weeks that I'm speaking to somebody on the other side of the table that could not disagree with me more.
Yeah.
But if you tell them you just care about them and you're just curious, and you just love people, I really think it's really simple. And I think that it can be really simple. Obviously, if they don't agree with you, that's okay.
Yeah.
And I think that our age group, especially 18 to 20, middle 20s, we don't disagree very well, obviously.
Yeah, sure.
And I
sure.
think, I think that if we can bring back disagreeing and agreeing to disagree,
Agree to disagree.
yeah,
Yes.
and just respect each other. I really think we have just lost that, and you don't see that on campus. You think you are shunned if you do not believe, and we sit back. I sit back. I'm like, oh, that's okay. That's okay.
Right.
But that's what I've really experienced on campus, and I really think if you're somebody that is hesitant to speak out and you don't know how to do it, speaking out is just so simple. It's just saying my truth, the truth of the gospel, or just living out the fruits of what God has blessed you with. And I think that says a lot. And I think people will naturally gravitate towards you
Yeah.
on
And
campus.
Haley, that's the importance of having a turning point chapter at your school, because it gives that point of contact. And
Absolutely.
I know that you all are open, and Turning Point's open to whoever wants to come, you know, and just to check out. And you may be sitting, across the table from somebody who has completely opposite views of you. But you know what? That's where change starts to happen, when you start having a conversation. And so I'm excited. I thought that the Turning Point chapter had been at the University of Kentucky for a long time, but it really hasn't. It's relatively new there, and I know that Charlie, several years ago, my memory serves me right, he made a trip to the University of Kentucky and was on campus. I don't know if you were there at that time when he did that, but there's definitely been lots of points of contact that have happened with regard to Turning Point and the University of Kentucky.
Absolutely. That is what the other night when we were talking about Turning Point, and the beautiful thing about it is the people who are most invited are the people who, just like what Charlie did, if you disagree, you're more invited
Yeah.
than anybody
You're
to
front of the
come.
line, front of the line.
And
Yeah.
and then also for people who are like-minded, who are conservative, who are Christians, who believe in the traditional values, you're encouraged when you go, because you find people, and it's can be very few and far between on a liberal campus, um, or at the University of Kentucky, to find people like-minded. So you get both when you go to these events, and you get conversation. And that's just, you walk around on campus sometimes, and you don't hear one conversation, and there's a million people walking around. It's just silent. And so that is just the beautiful thing about Turning Point, and Charlie's legacy is, let's talk again. Let's have conversation.
Yeah,
Let's
you use the word encourage, and I think that's the perfect word for what Turning Point does. Because first of all, young people on campus, they are a bit intimidated by the environment, by the professors, by the they're more left wing fellow students. So courage to live your life and to say that's what you need. And so encouragement is what young people need. So Turning Point is the perfect way to instill courage into young conservative and Christian young folks on campus. So we're so glad that it exists. And tell you what, we're going to go to a break here, and we'll come back with Haley Miller, and we'll talk more about just life on campus. Curious about how the professors and how the leadership on campus treats conservative students and conservative ideas. So we'll be right back with a member of Turning Point USA UK. So we'll be right back.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Now, back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
All right, welcome back to Kentucky's Voice, and I'm your host today, Tom Fallbush, with Bob Scott, with us, and also with a special guest, Haley Miller, who is a senior at the University of Kentucky, and she's a member of the Turning Point USA chapter, and we're just talking about campus life and what's it like as a conservative. And before we get back to that conversation, I want to encourage you you can text us at 502-571-0970, 502-571-0970. Love to hear your thoughts. If you have a question for Haley, we'll love to pass that along. And so we'll have her through this segment, maybe one more other segment. But Haley, we were talking about just campus life and what's it like to be a student there, and of course we focus more on just what's it like vis-a-vis your fellow students. But you're dealing with more than just your fellow students on a campus. You're dealing with the professors. You're dealing with the administration, just the campus operation there. And very often, and of course, my experience, I mentioned this to you between the breaks. So my experience, this is decades ago in the 90s, the professors were very hostile to faith, to conservatives. They made it very clear in the classroom, like, if you got that opinion, don't even bring it up in this class, because I will shut you down. And I would debate with them, and it was just a really intimidating thing to be a conservative or even a believer. So I assume it's gotten worse, but what's it like there at the University of Kentucky and just campuses in general, with professors?
Thank you. I will say your first 2 years at the university, with my experience at the University of Kentucky, professors with larger classes, it kind of starts at 18, 19, freshman, sophomore classes, larger classes, just your main courses that you need to get under your belt. Those professors tended definitely to enforce their ideological stance on politics, or your papers. You could kind of tell based off of the outline that they give you what you probably shouldn't write about as a conservative, or if you were, you might not get a wonderful grade. And so those are things I think a lot of conservative Christians, especially students, struggle with. Do you write what you truly believe on a paper and then you're potentially penalized for that in your grade? Or do you figure, I'm going to write what they would probably like to hear, and I'm going to end up with a better grade? So I think, and a lot of other people's experiences too, that is the situation you find yourself in. I think that's very common across every campus here in the United States in this temperature of politics. But as you start to mature, as I started to mature, your professors, you would kind of see, I kind of saw past all of that. And I think a lot of conservative Christians on college campuses that are predominantly liberal, they kind of are able to see past that a little bit as well. But it's definitely a struggle when you first get in there. You have to think to yourself, what am I going to do? What do I stand for what I believe in? Or do I get penalized? It's just, that is definitely a struggle. And down to your first day of class, are you a he, she, it, that type of thing. And so you're just like, oh, okay.
That's right. Everybody announce your pronouns at the beginning of the class. That's the first thing we do. It's like, oh, okay. Well, now we know what kind of professor we've got. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And I think some of that is enforced, and they have to, or else they are going to get in trouble. So I do try to have grace, but yeah, it's definitely over the years, and I've talked to students that are younger than me, by the year, it increasingly gets harder to decipher and to have discernment on, how do I handle this situation? And I think you have to handle it as it comes. But like Charlie believed in, like I would like to say, Turning Point, what they believe in, and what I've taken the same belief as, you have to stand your ground in today's society. That's your only choice. That's it. Yeah. That's what Charlie did. That's what we are called to do as Christians. So it's hard. It's the harder road, but I really.
But one positive out of that is you really do end up, learning what you stand for, and because you have to defend it. And so, and that's, and I'm kind of torn on this, and I'd love to bring Bob in on this too, as a, I'm not a parent, but I've got nieces and nephews. And so would I encourage my young nieces or nephews or young people in general to attend secular universities or even go to university in general, because even your conservative religious universities have these challenges at times. So I mean, how do you even frame this? It's almost like unless your child is ready to engage in this ideological battle and be armed to try to respond to it, it's really risky to send a child to university, to school. And now, Bob, what are your thoughts on that, generally?
Well, my oldest son and my youngest daughter, and there was several years age difference between the two of them. My youngest daughter graduated from UK. It's been about, I'm going to say 10, 12 years ago. And my oldest son just literally graduated from UK, and nothing's changed. And let's be real here. Let's just be real. Even back in last century, when I went to college, there was always more of a liberal preference there, and it was real.
Right.
Now, the time that I went through, I could be a little bit more bold and outspoken. And I was, always number one about my faith, and then secondly about my conservative beliefs. But that being said, I think the Bible scripture to be wise as serpents and yet gentle as doves. You kind of learn how to navigate, because you're there to get a good grade and get through. But you look for the opportunities to share your faith, whether it be in Jesus Christ or share your belief in conservatism. But let the Holy Spirit guide. That's always my advice, and it seemed to work out real well for me.
Well, and
I think it worked out.
Haley, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I was going to. We only got a few minutes left. I want to get her opinion on this, because to play off of what you're saying, Haley, if you were a parent and you after you're on campus, you see what's going on, what would you recommend for a parent for their child trying to decide whether to go to university or not? I mean, should they get involved in TPUSA day one? I mean,
Yes, but I really think, growing up myself, I have all older siblings, and what my parents always advised and instilled in us, which I think was brilliant, is you have to take the temperature of your child. For me, I was rooted in God. I was able, they taught me to go out in places that aren't Christian, go out of the bubble and stand your ground. Be gracious, but stand your ground. If you have a child or a young adult who is your child, and you can tell that they might be swayed, they're not as solid in their faith, they're not as solid, then maybe I would suggest a Christian university, and not saying that that's going to be that's the solution.
Right.
I think that really just, it depends on the stature of your child's heart. I'm not a mother, so I think that I might be blanketing this statement, but everybody has their own situation. But I really think it's the temperature and the stance of the child's heart, because my older siblings, sometimes growing up, they weren't in a place where, and I think I'm okay speaking on their behalf, there's a time in their life where they're less sturdy than I was, and then there was times where I was less sturdy than they were. And if you take that temperature on them and you just see talk to them, what do you think? This is what you're up against. Can you stand your ground? Do you think you can? Do you want to? I think having that conversation is huge.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so, because, we've all seen this, we've all seen what can happen or what can go wrong with this. I've seen a lot of, young people that are, like you said, not as strong in their faith or belief systems as we would like them to be. And they go into university, and just the atmosphere of coercion to kind of go along with this liberal worldview. It's just overwhelming, and they just conform to that. And so they come out with very, different belief systems and hostile belief systems and anti-faith belief systems, and it's risky, for that. So anyway, so appreciate your thoughts on that. Haley, can we have you one more segment, and we'll talk a little bit more about the campus life and TPUSA. We'll be right back at Kentucky's Voice, talking with a UK TPUSA member. So.
To Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
All right, welcome back to Kentucky's Voice, and we're pleased to have a great, wonderful guest with us today, Haley Miller, who's a senior at UK, and we're just talking about campus life, and she's a member of the TPUSA group there on campus, and we've been focusing a lot on them this week because of the new chapter that just opened up, the TPUSA Faith chapter here in Louisville at Evangel World Prayer Center. And so met her there at the event on Monday, and so Bob, it's great to see young people like Haley that are engaged and fighting the good fight on campus. And
that's right,
so,
Tom. All the young people at that event were incredible. It was just did my heart well, to hear them get up and espouse their faith in God and faith in our country. At the bottom of it. And I know we're only going to have about 5 minutes remaining with Haley because she's got to run to class. She's got a real job she's got to go to.
That's right.
But I do want to ask you, Haley, you have a really interesting story how you and your boyfriend met, because he was a star tennis player. I think you said the other night he won the he said that he won the state championship 3 times in tennis. And then he went on to the University of Louisville. So you got a little bit of the Louisville, Kentucky thing going on, and I was just curious, and I'm sure listeners would wonder how you guys came together.
Thank you. It was a very Kentucky story. We met at Keeneland at the horse races about, what would I say? It's been 2 Aprils ago. We met we were sitting at the white tables on the lawn, and he was seated right next to me, and we just started talking, and that was it. We spent most every day together, every week together since then. And, my favorite story is the first conversation we had. We probably stayed on the phone for an hour and a half, and all we talked about was what we believed in, and it was God and conservative view. That was just obviously high up on our totem pole for finding a partner, the highest. And we just talked about our relationship with Jesus and God, and that was so reassuring. That was just, it it was perfect.
And so,
So
yeah.
that's our story. It's kind the rest is kind of history,
Yeah,
but
that's the most important thing, isn't
yeah,
it? Faith. Once you have the faith and worldview thing aligned, a lot of other issues can resolve themselves in relationships. But if
Right.
those are not aligned, then it's really hard to make things work. So a lot of wisdom there, and whoever did that seating arrangement, I wonder who that was. That was could have been the Holy
I've been
Spirit. Who knows? You know,
downstairs.
that's
I
pretty good.
think so.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think your boyfriend spoke as well on Monday night, so he did a great job. And so, but anyway,
Yeah, in fact, Tom, if you
yeah, go ahead.
recall, he was at Charlie Kirk's funeral,
Oh, that's right. Oh, exactly right.
service that they had out in Arizona, and I
Mhm.
was very captivated. I'd like to have him on if we can work it out in the future. But he had an interesting story to tell about that.
Yeah, he was like a few seats down from Elon Musk apparently,
Yeah.
and he
Yeah,
spoke about
yeah.
that. And so, yeah, what a powerful story that was. But well, Haley, I keep calling you Kaylee. Sorry, I've got somebody worse for me named Kaylee, and it pops back. So Haley,
Okay.
and so we only have a few minutes left. So what would you leave young people or parents? What message would you want to leave them about campus life, TPUSA, or anything just from your heart? What would you like to say?
I would just like to speak from my own experience, and if I would have had somebody tell me when I was 18 years old, before I found Charlie and how he went about bringing up discussions that aren't easy to talk about and how to disagree and speak the truth, I would just share his message, which is the message I found was speak your truth, say it kindly, say it as though your moral compass is the Bible. Speak like how Jesus spoke, and that's how Charlie spoke. Say if somebody at the other end of the table is mocking what you believe in, and you're sitting there 18 years old thinking, I don't know, do I say something? Do I stand up? I don't want to be lukewarm in my faith. Say something, you can say anything as long as you say it nicely and kindly and lovingly. That's what I would say if you're a student on a campus. And for parents, I think that that's my parents equipped me and helped me be equipped to walk into those situations, but still, not every situation is laid out how to handle it. Um, so that would be my advice. I wish a couple years ago I was able to and confident enough to speak the truth and speak about Jesus and give myself that platform that I have now and that comfortability to just speak about God and show people what it's like. I think that's what we need the most on a college campus, truly.
That's
So that's what I guess advice to my younger self, but also anybody who is struggling with that internal turmoil of what do you do?
Yeah. Courage, have courage to live your life, speak out, but courage and also love, have love for people, and there's a balance there because you don't want to be a shrinking violet and just somebody that's agreeable, like you said, too agreeable. You just want to over empathize with people's situations to where the truth gets muddled, and so it's a fine balance, and like I said, TPSA and Charlie has created a great example of how to live that out, and so it's wonderful that you're connected with them and you're recommending that. Well, listen, we're going to let you get back to class. So I know you got to get things wrapped up so you can graduate. So Haley, thank you so much for your time today. This is awesome. It's really
Thank
a
you
treat
all.
to speak to you. And so if you ever need anything, let us know, and we'll stay in touch with the TPUSA chapter there in UK and keep promoting what they're doing. So have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much again. This is incredible.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
And we'll look forward to your Hallmark movie about your wedding. It's going to be great. That's good.
Kentucky love story right there.
That's right. The Kentucky love story in Keeneland. So it's
Thank
great.
you all so
Okay,
much
thanks.
again.
Yeah, thanks, Haley.
Thanks,
Appreciate it.
Haley.
All
Thank
right.
you.
So Bob, that's awesome. I mean, that is so encouraging just to meet someone like her, a
Yeah.
young person that is just, I mean, just the whole storyline of how Turning Point
Yes,
can
yes.
reach out to a young person, encourage them, help them navigate. I mean, and really, she's only been a member for like just here recently. She only joined recently,
Yeah.
but just
Yeah.
the fact that Charlie's TikToks, his social media has made such an influence on folks just broadly in the culture, and to provide that example of how to engage with the other side not to shrink back, because sometimes, listen, Charlie was a loving guy, but he also gave it to people when they deserved it. He wasn't going to sit there and just say, listen, I'm not going to let you walk all over me. I'm going to tell you what I really think. And this is the truth.
Exactly right.
And so it was just wonderful. He just had the right balance. And that's, so we needed that example. We need leaders. We need leaders in our lives to look up to. And so young people had that. They had it, but they still have it, because one good thing about this era, everything he said is captured, so you can always go back and watch it. And
Right.
you know what I'm saying?
That's right.
So it's not like he's still with us in many ways. So anyway, thoughts about that interview?
Yeah, what? First of all, what a breath of fresh air Haley and other young people like her are. That are just so well balanced and have that ability to, I guess, navigate. In a very, very difficult culture. That they're now living in. I try to think back the many years to my time in college, and I thought it was tough then, but man. It's magnified 100-fold today. So God bless her. And we did get a text that actually came in during her segment, and the person said, "We need no gatekeepers. Encourage communication." And that's really what it's about, and that's what Charlie loved. And you said it earlier, Tom. He was always big at his events. He would ask the people who disagreed with him.
Yeah.
That wanted to be negative with him. He said, "I want you at the front of the line now."
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Exactly. How encouraging and how strong is that? And again, our world has been made a better place because of Charlie Kirk. And by the way, thank you for texting in. If you do have a comment or a thought that you'd like to share with us, you can do so at 502-571-0970. Again, that phone number. Text line number is 502-571-0970.
Yeah, and if you have a young person in your life, either college or even high school or even middle school, encourage them to start a TPUSA chapter. They can do that. Or if there is a TPUSA chapter at their school, then encourage them to join, because this is how. Listen, this isn't life now and today isn't like it was when we were younger. The overwhelming cultural pressures to conform to a radical left view of the world is so prevalent, so overwhelming in young people's lives because of social media, because of just there is the mainstream dominant culture now is the left. And so they own every cultural institution. It wasn't like that when we were younger. At least you had a little bit of give and take on either side with most cultural institutions. Not anymore. And so if you have a child and you have an interest in them having a conservative or Christian worldview, if they're not involved in some group like that, you're throwing them to the wolves, because they're out to get them. The number one job of the left is to get to your kid's mind and their heart and change them.
That's right.
Because the left, they don't have kids. They don't have them. They need yours. They don't have kids. They need yours.
A really cool thing now that Evangel World Prayer Center has started the Turning Point USA Faith Chapter there at the church. If you're in the Louisville area, anybody can come to that. That's right. The door is wide open,
and they can start their own too. They can start their own at their
correct. And that's the other beautiful thing is I noticed that at the meeting the other night, they were encouraging. There were some people that weren't from necessarily the Louisville area that were basically being encouraged to start your own chapter.
Yeah, and why, let me say this, Bobby. Why do we push TPUSA so much? It's because it's just so effective, and it's hitting all the right notes, culturally, spiritually, the style of fight that they have, the emphasis on the right type of outreach. They're just hitting all the notes. I would say in the past, maybe be a Republican or go join college Republicans or something. No, I don't. At this day and age, a group like this is where you can coalesce and have the most impact and get the best support. So that's why we encourage that. So, hey, Bob, next segment, we have the last segment. I wanted to switch over and talk a little bit about Islamic influence and the growth of Islam in this country, and how cities are trying to grapple with that. We have a Muslim mayor of New York. The same city that 9/11 happened in. What is going on in our country? Let's talk about that. How's it impact Kentucky? And we'll be right back here in Kentucky's Voice.
Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. But we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
All right, welcome back to Kentucky's Voice, and we're going to shift gears and talk about Islam and its impact in America and what's going on right now. We're starting to see a larger and larger number of Islamic or Muslim, people that have a Muslim faith, coming to the country, immigrating, setting up enclaves, it's a difficult conversation on some level because you just don't want to attack people for their faith and attack people for their heritage and their cultural background, and that's not what this is about. However, we are realists. We are realistic, and if you look at any place Islam as a cultural force goes, it brings nothing but oppression and disruption, and quite frankly, a lot of violence and terrorism. And it is not healthy for a society, especially a Western country, to bring in and import Islamic worldviews, people that espouse that, because it doesn't blend with the West. It is inherently antithetical to the West, because Islam is a political system as much as it is a religion. And so it would be just like in the 1950s, we all decided to import a bunch of communists from the Soviet Union. And so, communists aren't going to work here in America. We were, same sort of thing. You're comparing a communist to a Muslim. Well, when it comes to their worldview, what it stands for, and what it's about, and the end result. Well, Tom, not all Muslims are terrorists. Granted, yeah, most Muslims are, I guess, moderate, fine people that just want to live their lives. However, the leaders in that group and the ideology and the whole religion of Islam has not been reformed. And if you follow it to what it says, if you actually play out Islam as a say it's a computer program, you drop it in, run Islam. Islam is okay. We're going to basically coalesce and take over a country, create Sharia law. Everybody needs to submit, and if you don't submit, we're going to violently overthrow you, and you better just deal with it. And so that is the inherent coding of Islamic, doctrine. And so
Yep.
those that take it seriously, the leaders in that group, that's what they do. So the moderate Muslim, they don't have a voice in their culture because they don't have a moral voice to say, look, Muhammad said, don't do this. No, the Muslim radicals are, no, Muhammad said it right here. He said, go in and kill the infidels and enslave everybody and take the women and put bags over their heads. And this is what it says right here in the Quran. And so we've got to be realistic, folks. We can't just let this force just come in and take hold and take root like it's done in Dearborn. Right? Like it's done in Dearborn is like 55%, Muslim now, and they're changing their street names to Muslim names. The call to prayer rings out all day long.
Right.
It's becoming it's the Middle East. Now you might say, well, that's just culturally insensitive. You're just being racist. Well, there's a difference between race and culture, right? So this culturally, that does not work in America, and we have to defend our culture, and we need to not be afraid as conservatives to say we're tired of seeing our culture ignored. Overdosing on immigration like we've had here in the past 30, 40 years is destroying our culture as a country at the time when we're losing confidence in our core culture anyway. And so it is just, this is a crisis and it needs to be dealt with. And before you comment, I'm going to play this clip from Tommy Tuberville, just about 1 minute. He has an answer. He wants to go ahead and just ban Sharia law. And so let's see what Coach Tuberville, Senator.
You also won't hear from Democrats about how radical Islamic terrorists are currently carrying out a mass genocide of Christians in Nigeria. Think about this. More than 62,000 Christians have been slaughtered since 2000 by radical Islamic terrorists in Nigeria. You heard that right, 62,000. And just this year alone, more than 7,000 Nigerian Christians have been murdered because of their faith alone. You can't turn on the TV without hearing about Israel's so-called mass genocide of Palestinians every day. And yet, when it comes to 62,000 Christians being slaughtered by radical Muslims, it's radio silence. This extreme ideology is straight from the pit of hell, and it has no place in American society.
That's right. It has no place in American society. And so he is advocating banning Sharia law, that's their legal system that they try to bring in and basically supplant the American law or the law of whatever country they're in. And they say, we're going to ignore that. We're going to operate under this Sharia law, which is Islamic legal doctrine. And they actually have Sharia courts and all this stuff. And so it's just a way to just basically create a separate nation within a nation. And so, Bob, I've been ranting enough.
No, it's good, honest ranting, Tom, that you're doing, and it is true. In fact, we are, folks. You don't want to miss tomorrow's show either. We're going to be taking an even deeper dive into this. Did you know that there was a recent terrorist attack that apparently was being planned by Islamists, radical Islamists who are from Dearborn, that they were going to hit a large amusement park, Cedar Point, in Ohio, and the FBI was able to thwart it. Again, you're not hearing it anywhere else, and the question I have to ask, Thomas, why? I think we know the answer to that question, but this is something I know. I've had Thomas Mann on my show several times. He's a nationally, internationally known expert on counterterrorism. He's a former colonel, was a Green Beret, and is like I say, he's an expert. And he over a year ago told me when I had him on as a guest that he sadly was predicting, and not just him, a lot of people that are in the intel community, that there is going to be major terrorist strikes, plural, not singular, that are coming to America The intelligence is all pointing in that direction. It's not if, it's, as he said, it's a matter of when, and that's where we all, to be need to be very in tune, not walk around in fear. God hasn't given us a spirit of fear, but we need to be wise, and be ready and prepare ourselves. Unfortunately, the previous administration left the borders wide open to seed our nation with these Islamic extremists, and that's, to me, Tom, where it needs to begin, or it already is beginning. But they need to be rooted out, and they need to be shipped out.
Honestly, yeah, right, yeah,
as soon as possible.
And what you're going to see, Bob, is a lot of these terrorists that are going to do this, like the terrorists that were thwarted in Cedar Point. These were American citizens, right? These are people that have gotten their citizenship, and they are here legally, and because they're citizens, right? So, and that's the problem. We've been too generous with our immigration system over the past 30, 40, 50 years. We had this idea that, America just has magic soil, right? So as soon as you just step onto our soil and sign a piece of paper, that you can become an American, and you're just going to buy into our system and our culture, and you're just going to assimilate.
Yeah.
Well, the opposite argument of that is just what happened at Cedar Point. These are American citizens who had the right to go out and buy, semi-automatic rifles, American-made semi-automatic rifles, which they had in their hand. PSA, if you're into guns, they bought a bunch of PSA ARs, and they were going to go shoot up Cedar Point. And so, I'm sorry, they are not Americans in my mind. They're
not. No.
Just because they've signed a citizenship form and they're here, they have not bought into our system. They're not one of us.
They're terrorists.
They're not one of us.
Is what they are.
So,
and
we need to get rid of this.
Word, Tom, is they're not assimilating.
That's right.
And being a part of the 200 and almost 50 years
right
that has made America the country that it is. And there's no assimilation.
Well, question is, Bob, can Islam assimilate? Can Islam assimilate into Western?
Sadly, I don't believe that they can. Their history says no.
That's right.
To that question is they go in, they take advantage of, especially if you're talking about Western cultures, of very open systems, the right to have free speech and that type of thing.
Yeah.
They go in, they act like they're assimilating, and then they start, gaining power through running for office. And we know in Great Britain alone, that most of the key cities in Great Britain are now ruled by Muslims.
That's right. Muslim mayors,
And even though they make up still a very small percentage of the population,
That's right. But it's a growing population, and it has a lot of the strength. It seems like what's happening out there's a pattern here too, where Islamic culture comes in, they set up enclaves, they start using a lot of left-wing woke ideologies to help empower themselves politically, and they try to partner up with the left to gain political power. But the pattern historically has been, once that happens and once they do get power, they turn on those leftists and they shut them out and oppress them, because at the core, Islam has a very culturally conservative view of the world. And so, which is not, it doesn't work with the leftist worldview in general. But initially they partner with them in order to get power, and when they get power, then they shut out the left. And so that's why you're going to see. And this is a great. I heard this yesterday from another influencer. He said that what you're going to see is what you're seeing in London. The Muslim groups will partner with the left to get political power. Once they have enough political power, they would then supplant the left and take over these cities. And so
because they don't need them anymore. They've been a useful idiot, in that process, right. And it's the wolf in sheep's clothing.
That's what's happening in New York with Mondami. That's what's happened in London with their mayor, Sadiq Khan. That's what's happening in Dearborn, and so the left, you're useful idiots. You're useful idiots when it comes to Islam, because you're first of all, you're dying out anyway. You don't have any future because your system is all death and ideas are death. So the Muslims have kids, and they're going to use you to take over. And so all these left-wing cities are going to be turned into, green cities. This flag of Islam is going to fly over these cities. All these blue cities are going to turn into green cities if we don't stop it. And so, but anyway, we're going to have more on this tomorrow, Bob. And so this is an important topic, and it's delicate how you preach it. You've got to be sensitive to some issues here. But we got to be realistic too. People that espouse this ideology, they're not going to assimilate, and it's nothing but problems for the country that hosts them. And so, what do? We'll be back. Thanks to Haley Miller, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.